prison that dresses you like skin. Do you feel free? Free to think, to desire, to be? Or is there something in you that repeats like an ancient echo, a voice whispering in the dark, saying, "You can't. This is wrong. You are not enough. You should be different"? You weren't born with that voice. She was planted. For looks that shaped you, words that hurt you, silences that taught you to be silent. And now, you call it consciousness. But she's not yours. It's a reflex. Carl Jung said, "As long as you do not become aware of what controls you from within, you will continue to call it fate." And maybe that's what you need to hear today. You are not free. You are being lived. Lived by a script you didn't write. By a story that begins before you and still dictates your every move. Real freedom is not doing what you want. It is to find out who it is that moves you. And sometimes what he wants, it's just pleasing ghosts. The shadow that signs your name. From an early age, you learn to hide parts of yourself. When I cried, they told me to swallow the crying. When he got angry, they told him to calm down. When you dreamed loud, you were mocked. And then you began to trim its edges, modeling to fit, silencing anger, desire, intuition. But none of that has gone away, just descended into the basement of the psyche, where the shadow lives. Carl Jung called shadow everything that we reject in ourselves, not because it is bad, but because it is not accepted. And what is not accepted becomes clandestine. You don't see, but you feel. We learn to smile when we're frustrated, to agree to avoid conflict, to look strong while imploding inside. And so, what was spontaneous was buried by what was acceptable, not out of malice, but out of survival. You have repressed your anger, your sadness, your deepest desires, and that hasn't gone away, just hid, waiting for the right moment to escape through the cracks. This is the invisible tragedy. The more we try to control the shadow, the more we are dominated by it. It manifests itself in emotional outbursts, in disguised sabotage, in repeating patterns. She is the reason you keep attracting the same dramas, feeling the same pains, living the same cycles. The shadow becomes the master of the house when you refuse to recognize it as part of you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You won't be free until you sit at the table with that which you have avoided all your life. Is it coming now? Subscribe to the channel, activate the Tinkerbell, so you don't miss anything of what's to come. This journey is not easy, but it's the only one that takes you inside. The only place from which a freedom can spring that is not borrowed, imitated, conditioned. To accept the shadow is not to give in to chaos. It is to regain wholeness. It is to return to being whole, where before you were only half. The mirror of others. You believe you know who you are. But look closer. Look boldly. How many parts of you have been shaped by the gaze of others? How many "I am like this" actually hide? I was taught that I should be like this. Carl Jung reminds us that the identity we carry is rarely true. It is largely an adaptation, a mask carefully sculpted to fit the expectations of the father, the mother, the group, the culture, the time. You have learned to identify with this mask. And today, he calls her me. But that persona, that face you show to the world is not you. It is only the polished shell that hides everything that was once judged too sensitive, too strange. Do you remember the exact moment you started hiding parts of yourself? Maybe not, because the pain of rejection acts in silence. She teaches you that being loved is safer than being true. And so, with every choice made to please, you have abandoned one more piece of your essence. How many of us live as reflexes, reflections of the projections of others, of the inherited traumas, of the stories that we have not even begun to write, but have already continued to obey? To break free is to break that mirror. It is to see that what the other expected of you is not your mission. It's daring to be something they never let you be. And that takes courage. Because by taking off the mask, you can lose applause, but finally, for the first time, you will be able to hear the sound of your own voice, and the silence that will come after that. It will not be empty. It will be sacred. Invisible chains, freedom. How many times have you used that word without realizing that maybe you've never actually lived it? What we call freedom is often just the exchange of one prison for another. We come out of obedience to parents and fall into obedience to social networks. We run away from the rules of religion and surrender to the rules of performance. We call ourselves free, but we still belong. Belonging to the trial, fear of failure, the need to prove something. Jung knew that the human being cannot stand emptiness, and when we are not aware of who we are, we accept any way to fill the hole. An ideology, a routine, a relationship, a false self-image. And the more we try to sustain this facade, the further we move away from the soul. Have you ever stopped to wonder, who would I be without the pressures that shape me, without the fear of not being accepted, without the search for validation, without the obligation to succeed? It's a dangerous question because it destroys certainties, but it is also the gateway to authenticity. True freedom begins when you realize that everything you think you need, it may be exactly what keeps you chained. And these currents do not make noise. They masquerade as common sense. It's called normal life. But listen, if your peace depends on pleasing, if your joy depends on approval, if your existence depends on being useful, productive, desirable, so maybe you are still living under orders that come from outside, even when you believe you are acting for yourself. True liberation is not shouting independence. Dig until you find what's been buried. Your most authentic desire, your own source. The call to descend. You came here seeking freedom. But perhaps you are beginning to understand that true freedom is not found rising, but coming down to what you avoided, to the memories that hurt, to the desires that didn't fit, to the versions of you that were left behind on the way to being accepted. Jung called this process individuation, a radical dive into the soul in search of wholeness, where the goal is not to be perfect, but whole. For this, you will have to unlearn what they said was right, unlearn the characters you dressed, unlearn even the name you gave to your pain. The descent is dark. It has no trail or map, but there is a silent, almost sacred call that is heard only when the noise of the world finally falls silent. And in that silence, you find something you were never taught to seek. Yourself, not the domesticated you, not the performing outside you, but the essential self, which lives beneath the masks, behind the fears, beyond the words. Such a meeting does not bring immediate relief. It brings truth. And the truth, when it comes, breaks illusions. It breaks fragile identities. It breaks the idea that freedom is in conquering the world. Because she's never been away. Thank you for making it this far. For having walked with me through shadows, masks, and mirrors. This channel is a space for those who dare to dive deep. For those who are not content with shallow answers. If this journey touched you in any way, sign up, activate Tinkerbell, and walk with us through the next steps. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to be free. It just needs to be whole. And this, perhaps, is the greatest act of courage in your life.